Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Nelson. I serve on the board of directors of the Northeast Indiana Local Food Network, and I'm an instructor of biology and environmental science at the University of St. Francis. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the following people and organizations. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Do you guys see this? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So the Northeast Indiana Local Food Network is presenting this online program series called The Power of Local Food. I'd like to thank the University of St. Francis Division of Sciences for being a sponsor of the Power of Local Food series, as well as Greater Fort Wayne for facilitating this Zoom conversation and their generous support as a founding donor of the Northeast Indiana Local Food Network. Today, our program is called Navigating Food Marketing Labels. And I would like to take a moment to thank Adam Welch for sharing his interest about the importance of food words and hosting this program. Terry Thiessen with Purdue University Extension of Allen County for joining us to share her expertise, and Sarah Claycomb of the Health Food Shop for sharing her experience in working with both producers and consumers of local food. So I'm going to come back, stop sharing. Okay, so today's topic is navigating food marketing labels. Adam is our moderator for today's program, and he is the Director of Economic Development at Greater Fort Wayne and serves on the Board of Directors of the Northeast Indiana Local Food Network. Adam, you and I have had several discussions about the meaning of food and the labels surrounding them, and it's really your frustration and confusion surrounding food labels that was the catalyst for our program today. So I'm going to turn this conversation over to you and our food label experts, Terry and Sarah.
Well, thank you, Nicole. Yeah, so as Nicole had said, I work in economic development at Greater Fort Wayne, and yeah, I actually find before I kind of dive into GFW, I can come at this from a personal perspective. You know, luckily I'm married to a woman who cares deeply about these things. But if I am personally shopping, if someone who cares about these issues, I've always said that if I'm out shopping, I'm looking at certain words or labels, I admittedly become confused, I become frustrated. And I'll kind of touch upon that in some examples, but I want to emphasize Greater Fort Wayne's support and why we support the work being done by the Northeast Indiana Local Food Network and Purdue Extension and all of our local retail and growers. It improves quality of life. It's a healthy option for our citizens. And at the end of the day, it's economic development in our opinion. So I really want to hit home on that because I think a lot of times people don't view it in those perspectives. But again, like I said, I personally am a loosely educated consumer. I can become overwhelmed when shopping. I do become overwhelmed, and at some point, you just start to feel a little exhausted when you're in the store trying to make decisions. And at the end of the day, you also have budgetary restrictions that we all have to consider. So my first question, I think I'll go ahead and start with Terry, if that's okay, is before we dive into some of my more specific questions, do you and or Sarah have any advice for folks like me who kind of have these same experiences and frustrations about these issues?
Yeah, first of all, do not believe everything you read on the internet. There are so many half-truths and misconceptions out there, and it can be really overwhelming. You know that it is overwhelming, but also no one should be having a panic attack over buying a tomato. So some of the things that I found really helpful is finding people that know a little bit more than you about the topic and just educating yourself, but also be easy with yourself and focus on those small, easy, sweet steps. If you're anything like me, the more you learn, the more you realize that you know absolutely nothing. So just continuing to learn more about these things and deciding which things are really important for you.
Yeah, Sarah, do you have anything else to add to that?
I do. I want to second what Terry says about relieving some of the pressure from from ourselves. We have to keep in mind that these are really sophisticated marketing tactics that are sort of being deployed against us as consumers. And they're $1 million budgets in some of these giant corporations, and they're really working to use language that doesn't have legal definitions to sell you their products. And while we're all kind of used to that, as people try to grow and be more responsible consumers, and like Terry said, you start to get some information and realize how much more there is to learn. It can feel very overwhelming. So I would just suggest setting priorities, understanding what's really important to you as a customer. And as I think we'll find out throughout this conversation, that shopping local is going to end up being the answer to a lot of these problems, because you get closer to the people who are actually producing the food, and you can get that information that Terry was talking about a little more directly and with a lot less marketing spin.
Sarah, you just said something. It's a good segue, I think, into my next question. You had said specifically about shopping local, and I want to emphasize to those who could be watching that it's not to say you can't go, like Terry said, you can't panic about buying a tomato, but you just said about shopping local. And to bring this down to a lower level again, for someone who is, again, what I would call loosely educated, right? Someone who cares and wants to do this the right way. Are there certain products, again, for people like myself, right, where they could start with certain things that they could buy that are simple and easy to learn about, that they could go out and look for when they're purchasing a product?
Yes, it's a little tricky because my answer is eggs, but also eggs have a lot of labeling that can be a part of their packaging that can be a little confusing. The reason I do say eggs is that in our particular local area, we have lots of great people who are raising chickens and selling eggs. Meat in general, meat is another one. We are really lucky to have some great producers here. So produce would be the third, and dairy. And those are all, what in the grocery business, we call those perimeter items. Those are all really fresh items. They're not things that you find in the center store, but we're lucky here in our local region that we have a lot of great producers of those things. So once you can, first of all, sort out some of the labels, which we're going to work on doing here. And then also, I know everybody can't make it to a farmer's market, but in a lot of communities now, there are many farmers markets, and also there are small retail stores who are selling for the producers. So if you can get to a small retail grocer, a lot of times they've got the information for you. They know the farmer, or you can go right to the market and buy directly from the farmer and ask, what is cage free? What we're going to realize here is that a lot of this issue stems from the fact that they're not legal definitions. They don't have an exact meaning. So you can go ask the person who raises the chickens, what is your farm like? Oftentimes you can go to the farm. We do, they'll let you come and check out their operation so you can feel fully comfortable with what they have going on. So I would start with eggs, meat if you eat it, and produce, because you can get the closest to the people who are actually producing those things to get really right to the bottom of what their practices are and what you're buying.
And like you said, Sarah, we'll touch on some of those labels, those specific labels here in a second. Terry, did you have anything else to add to that before we hop on to the next one?
Yeah, I just wanted to continue with that conversation of looking at your own motivations. What's really important to you? Are you doing it for your physical health? Are you doing it for the environmental health? Do you just really want to invigorate the local economy? So identifying your motivations and then diving in. For me, local foods was one of the first things I explored when exploring food systems. It's a really easy one to look at just because it's everywhere, it's around you. And then I got to know my local farmers. So asking them questions and really understanding their motivations behind that. And then the gateway foods for this exploration for me was tomatoes, eggs, and meat, kind of similar to what Sarah talked about. And there really is nothing to compare a locally grown egg, a locally grown tomato, and a locally grown slab of bacon. You put it all together on a sandwich. Like, those things are really where a lot of us start to explore the local food scene and going down that rabbit hole.
And I know before I dive into some of these specific words and labels, I know some of these words that are discussed don't have really legal definitions and are sometimes used inconsistently. Do you guys have any advice about words that could be over the top and used more often than they should be, or are some labels more important than others? If there's, I don't know if there's anything to add to that, but that's been another thing that's always run across my mind too when I'm shopping. Either one of you, I'm not sure if you have any thoughts.
I would, eggs have a couple labeling issues. One is cage free. And I guess I can tackle that. So what you get into with cage free is any chicken that's not in a cage is considered cage free. But you could have more, thousands of chickens in dark, I guess it's a coop even at that size, then they never go outside. So is that in the spirit of cage free? Is that what, when we go to our big supermarket and you pay the extra $1 for the cage free egg, is that in the spirit of what you're wanting? Whereas, Wholesome Meadows is a local cage free producer of eggs. Their chickens roam outside. They're outdoors, they're eating grass. So, there again, if you can't ask that national distributor, what is your version of cage free, if their website's probably not going to show you the photo of the thousands of birds in the, coop that's not lit. If you can't get to the bottom of what their version of cage free is, then I would recommend getting cage free eggs from a local grower where you can really look at them, or come and ask me, what do they do? What is their process? Why do they put cage free on that label? And we can tell you.
Yeah, I think too that it's important to really look into what's important for your own motivations, and understanding that a lot of these labels do have governing bodies. So there's somebody that checks the validity of it, a third party that's not the business, that's not the seller of the product. So making sure that they're audited. But like Sarah said, like what's actually happening there? Cage free, you think, is these happy chickens, and that's not always the case, roaming free on their pastures. So just looking into some of that information can also get overwhelming, but it's something that it makes you more empowered as a consumer. There's also a lot of claims for worker rights labels as well. And that's something that when you start getting into bigger labels, understanding what some of those mean and have those third-party audits that are happening to give the consumer confidence. That's really what they're trying to do, is show you, the consumer, that these things are happening and we're making sure that it's happening.
And cage free, I mean, truly, again, for those who are watching, these guys talking to me now know that I have truly privately expressed my desires to learn more. And that absolutely was one of those words I would have never understood until at this very moment, the differences between, how those terms can be used. So Terry, this one's specifically for you, if you don't mind. Like specifically, a few things I wrote down here on my notes. Speaking of these labels and this verbiage, I wanted to hone in on a few. Could you clarify some of the differences here between, there's a handful of what I would call a handful of organic terms. All right. For instance, you have, I'm going to read right here from my notes, but you have non-certified organic and certified organic. And then even within that certified organic, you have 100% organic, and made with organic. And I mean, if you're Adam Welch out shopping, that alone can cause someone to shut down or be overwhelmed. Could you shed any light on those terms that I just mentioned? I know I threw a lot there, but that's just something that I've experienced that I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah, so first of all, organic is a highly regulated term. It's a term that is used for products, food products, and it's regulated by the USDA. And it means that the processor, the farmer, the facilities are undergoing an intensive certification process. And for the farmers, this can take up to 3 years, even for the initial certification. And it really includes a set of, when it comes to farming, it includes a set of cultural, biological, and mechanical practices that ensure that the farm is supporting a cycle of on-farm resources, promotes ecological balance, and conserves biodiversity. One of the things that's comes from people when they start talking about organic is they think that organic means that no pesticides are being used, and that is not true at all. Organic farmers use pesticides as part of their integrated pest management or their IPM program, and within organics they cannot use synthetic pesticides, but they are still allowed to use what we call natural pesticides, so they come from natural sources. So that's just a little bit about organic. The actual certified organic. Non-certified, you'll see a lot when you're at the farmers markets, or when people put up a sign saying that they've used certified or they've used organic practices. It means that they're following this criteria set up by the USDA, but they're not getting certified by anybody. So it's trusting that their words are truthful, but there's no one to back it up. There's no third party that says, yep, they did these things, or nope, they didn't do these things. And then when you start getting to some of those terms that you brought up, the 100% organic,
Right.
made with organic, those are really for more processed foods versus the whole foods that you find at farmers market. You're not going to find a made with organic bell pepper at the farmers market, but when you've got a box of crackers that's made with organic product, that means something in there was organic. You don't know necessarily what it is without looking at the label. 100% organic means all the ingredients in there are made with organic products. And then organic can just mean that is similar to the made with organic, and meaning that there's some things in there that make it an organic product. But anytime you use the word organic, it means that it has to follow those regulations. It's a highly regulated word.
No, I think that's helpful. I mean, I could sit there and we could have a 30-minute discussion on those terms alone. So, and that could be coming. I mean, after we have this first discussion. Sarah, speaking of a little bit of what Terry had just touched upon, could you, if you wouldn't mind, kind of explaining the difference there between certified organic and then certified naturally grown? I mean, should a consumer value one over the other? I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell you, again, as a layperson, the difference between certified naturally grown and certified organic. No clue.
Sure. So certified naturally grown, CNG, Certified Naturally Grown, CNG is a nonprofit organization that was started in the early 2000s. And its principal purpose was easier entry for small farms into a certified organic product. So the USDA certification that Terry talked about is very extensive. It is somewhat, well, farmers will tell you it's very expensive, not somewhat expensive, it's very expensive. And there are lots of loopholes that you have to jump through, which is good because you're trying to get a certain level or quality of product. But that's really prohibitive for small farms. So CNG certification is not something that you're really going to oftentimes see in a supermarket. The producers that sell to the supermarkets are much larger. They're just going to usually have the USDA certified organic label if it's organic. CNG certification is something that you'll see in CSAs, where you buy directly. It's a crop share program where you buy directly from a farm. You'll see it at farmers markets. You'll see it at small grocers like the health food shop. And what it does is it takes the robust standards of the USDA organic program. They're not slighted really in any way, but the inspection program is different in the way that it's a peer-reviewed inspection program. So farmers go to other farms and do the inspection to make sure that the standards are being followed. That's kind of cool in a couple ways, because as opposed to just having the once a year formal inspection, farmers in the same region are gonna kind of know what's going on at other farms throughout the year. And because it's an organization built by the farmers, they're very invested in keeping the standards up. And so, you know, your friend or a farmer who's within your same region is likely going to be part of your inspection team. And they're also going to kind of know how you're running your farm just because they're all in the same business. So it's a program, though, that's really meant for small scale farms. The fees are quite a bit less. I do believe the farmers have to do a little more work within the organization to kind of make up, you know, to help it run. It's a nonprofit and it's ran by the farmers. We do support it here because we want to support local production and our local food systems. And many of the farmers here who are using organic standards and who do want a certification that is that has an inspection component so that we know that the standards are there, they just can't afford the USDA organic program. And so we're supportive of those farmers here, just sort of as a step in the path of supporting all the local growers and producers.
Thank you. And we wanted to kind of keep this between 20 and 30 minutes. So we're good on time, and kind of keep it short and concise, and maybe, like I said, have follow-up. So I think this is a good start, and I have a lot more questions personally that I could ask, and I hope we have an opportunity to do that down the road here in a month or so. Before we toss it back over to Nicole for some closing thoughts, I wanted to see if either of you guys have any just last second things maybe I didn't touch upon that you wanted to share, or parting comments before we go to Nicole here real quick.
I want to say that I think it's just really important for consumers to decide what is important to them and to their own belief systems, and then take those small, sweet baby steps towards your goal of learning more about what's on your plate.
No, that's good. Sarah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would just like to add that the organization that we are all involved with, Northeast Indiana Local Food Network, on the website, NEIfood.org, there is a glossary that has some of these definitions sort of spelled out for all of us. And be honest, I've checked it. So just to kind of see what the standard, you know, definition that's being used for those terms is, I've checked it, and it is super helpful.
I'm so glad you said that. Seriously, I would have probably forgotten to, and it would have been a missed opportunity. So actually, that's where a lot of my questions came from, besides my own personal experience, because I know Janet has done an amazing job putting that website together in those terms. So hey, with that, Nicole, I will toss it back over to you before we wrap it up. All right.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time to do this. I think it's really helpful. I hope that our community finds this helpful. I am going to compile a list of resources. Maybe Terry gave me some when we talked last. Sarah, if you have some resources that you think would be helpful, let me know, and I'll compile those and put those at the end of this segment on our website. I'm going to share my screen again real quick. And find the right slide here. Okay, so just again want to thank our founding donors of the Northeast Indiana Local Food Network. And like Sarah said, you can find more information on our website. And if you have questions or other things that you would like to learn about regarding food labels, please let us know. You can email me at nnelson@sf.edu, or you can find an email address on our Northeast Indiana Local Food Network website. And we will try to follow up on those questions. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, guys.